Well, hello, PVC. It's good to see you all here today. Today we are in Daniel chapter 3 as we continue our journey through the book of Daniel. We've all had those moments in our lives. The ones where our beliefs are of right and wrong, good and bad, are pushed to the limit. In high school, I had a similar experience. It wasn't anything serious, but it tested whether I would or wouldn't compromise my beliefs. I was in a Spanish class, and one of the football players asked me to give him the answers to the test. And the teacher wasn't really even paying attention. And in that moment, I had a choice. As believers, we are called to honesty. And so would I glorify God by doing what was right, or would I cave to the social pressure? I could reason why helping this guy out on the test was a net positive thing. It would have helped the whole school. If he failed the test, he couldn't play. So by cheating, I was helping him, the team, and the entire school. No one would fault me for that. But I knew in that moment that God cared. It was a question of worship. Would I worship the King of Kings through obedience, or would I worship cultural pressure? Sometimes we are faced with small decisions like this. And yet, such clashes of worship are important. Moments of obedience in the small things speak loudly of our worship. And other times, we are tested in more public and dramatic situations. That same pressure that I felt in a small way in high school, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego felt in a life or death way. Today we look at Daniel's friends who face a test. The question becomes, will they compromise their worship for the sake of comfort and power? Or will our exiles remain true to the God they serve? The stakes are life and death for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The tension in the text happens quickly, and we are confronted with the question of loyalty to God or earthly powers. You see, the question we must ask ourselves is, will we worship idols or God? And what are the idols that we have set up to worship in our daily lives? As God's people far from home, we must resolve not to compromise our faith and our worship of God with worldly things. So first we look at that as we must first resolve to be aware. And we're going to see that in Daniel chapter 3, 1 through 7, which says, Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, an obelisk, if you will. And he set it up on the plain of Dura and the province of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces to attend the dedication of the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces assembled for the dedication of the statue the king set up. Then they stood before the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar set up. Notice the repetition of people and the word set up. A herald loudly proclaimed, people of every nation and language, you are commanded, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the drum, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. Therefore, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, and the harp, and every kind of music, people of every nation and language fell down and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. You see, we don't know how long after the events of chapter 2 that these events occur. But last week we left our 3 exiles being promoted to leadership. Daniel, perhaps serving away from the king at this time, is noticeably absent. With that, we set up our story, which is more about the power and the glory of God and the faithfulness of his servants than it is about a statue. This chapter is about worship and loyalty to the true king. The king has set up a statue on the plain, or it actually could be on the wall near the plain. The location isn't really exact in the text, but we know it was tall, and this gold statue, it would have been seen from a long way off and from many different directions. This was Nebuchadnezzar wanting allegiance, worship, and praise. So he set up a statue and invited, or really demanded, all of his loyal subjects to come and to worship it. And we quickly get the who's who of society and government showing up to celebrate and worship the king. It was loud and public. It was a problem for our exiles. They had one king, God. They were now being called to give their allegiance and their worship to another king. This episode is about worship. Would they join the other government employees in worshiping the idol? The consequences of disobedience were deadly. The world, by the way, will demand our worship. Note, the one who doesn't bow dies. So the stage is set. Our exiles could have reasoned that such worship wasn't a big deal. It was good for business, and they could then hold more sway with important people and maybe turn their attention towards their God. Notice how easy it is to give reasons for worshiping idols. As God's holy people, though, we are called to worship Him alone. It is high treason to give worship anywhere else. But our spiritual enemies are busy setting up idols to draw us away from God. These things, whether big or small, call us to divert our attention and worship away from God. We can't be blind to the spiritual realities all around us. As we resolve to worship God alone, we must resolve first to be aware of spiritual realities. Let us open our eyes to the cultural undercurrents. Beloved, we cannot willfully be ignorant. God called us and equipped us to see spiritual realities. Therefore, if you find yourself with your company or friends at an altar table doing bye-bye, we must be aware. It is more than tradition and culture. It is worship. This doesn't mean being confrontational or disrespectful at that moment, but it does mean quietly choosing not to participate. You may find yourself in similar situations at work or around holidays or family gatherings. Go into these moments having resolved to worship God alone and take comfort from the truth in this story that we're reading today. We also have idols like money and comfort and relationships and our plans that call our attention as well. And these things are not inherently evil, but the attention we devote to them can itself become worshipful. So as we seek to be aware, we must ask, what are the idols in our daily lives that we have set up? Because there are spiritual forces behind them. Let us open our eyes to the things that we seek daily. And let us open our eyes to these things as we seek God daily while living in our Babylon. Next, we must resolve to stand firm, and we're going to read selected verses from 8 to 23. Some of the Chaldeans took this occasion to come forward and maliciously accuse the Jews. Now skip down to verse 12. It says there are some Jews. This is the Chaldeans talking to the king that you have appointed to manage the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men have ignored you, the king, and they do not serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. You see, up to now, our three exiles have been quiet in the background. They had not made a scene. They didn't hold up signs proclaiming their defiance. They just quietly and respectfully resolved to worship God alone. However, their quiet rejection of the king didn't go unnoticed by some. Certain men, the Chaldeans here, tattled on them. These would be their opposition, maybe political rivals. And God's people, we need to be aware, have enemies. Our worship of God does not go and will not go unchallenged. We have a spiritual enemy. Sometimes it can manifest as people attacking us, calling us to worship other things. Sometimes it can seem to be coming from within our very self. We must choose today to stand firm in our faith and our worship of God. However, you will not go unnoticed by the enemy when you do that. Your faith will be confronted. When we worship God, it is a declaration of war to Satan. May people know to whom we belong. Our exiles could not hide because others saw their faith. Understand that when we gather together and share the gospel and pray together, we declare God's glory to an enemy who hates those very things. You cannot hide. As we will soon see, God's people are not alone in their stance. God is with them, but we'll wait to get there. Let's now skip down to verse 14. Nebuchadnezzar calls Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego before him, and he says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you don't serve my gods or worship the gold statue that I've set up? Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and the drum, and every kind of music, fall down and worship the statue that I have made. But if you don't worship it, you will immediately be thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. And he continues, and who is the God who can rescue you from my power? Nebuchadnezzar brings in the three young men, and he is angry. They know that and what is at stake. When the king is angry, people die. He gave them a chance in that moment before him to worship the statue. I mean, what a tense moment in Scripture. I mean, I feel stressed just thinking about it. What did they feel? And the pressure had to be unimaginable in that moment. It's easy to say that we will worship God alone, but rarely are we confronted in such a dramatic way as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I want to step back here. We frequently encounter confrontation. We just don't always recognize it. Whether it be to cheat on a test or join in bye-bye or to spend our money in a way that only brings our comfort or spend our time in a way that glorifies ourselves and our wanton pleasures, we are faced with the same pressure and the same importance. When we are tempted to worship our idols, even the small ones, it is of great importance. Our faithfulness is proven in the little everyday moments of faithfulness. I want to emphasize the importance of everyday faith here. Now, as we saw in verse 15, there's this key verse moment, and this is one of the central and focal points of the whole story. And Nebuchadnezzar says, who is the God who can rescue you from my power? Nebuchadnezzar has just challenged the creator of the universe. This story is about God's power over worldly powers. And the question the text asks is, who is more powerful, God or Nebuchadnezzar? He's challenged God. Who can rescue you? Well, we'll soon see. Let's skip down to verse 16 here. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to give you an answer to this question. If the God we serve exists, or here it would almost read rather, if the God we serve wants, then he can rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he can rescue us from the power of you, the king. In verse 18, another key verse. But even if he does not rescue us, we want you as king to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. The three men's response is gracious but firm. They will trust in their God above all. Notice the faith displayed here. They don't need to explain that their God is more powerful. They knew God had the power. They remembered the stories from the Old Testament and their history. It wasn't a question of power. Their worship wasn't contingent on whether God could or even would save them. Live or die, they would be faithful. Commentator Kenneth Gangle writes, the ultimate display of godly courage is not to die with desperate expectations that God will somehow intervene at the last moment, but rather to live or die in complete confidence that God will do what he will do. We have such a prayer modeled for us by Jesus himself. In the garden, he prayed, not my will, but yours be done. Our three exiles seem to have prayed something very similar before this confrontation. Their courage comes from the knowledge that God cannot be stopped, even if they die. We are faithful regardless of life circumstances. If we are on our deathbeds, let us trust that he will do what he will do, whether that is to heal us or to receive us. I'm not suggesting, however, that we forego medical treatment. Far from it. I am saying that our faith and our courage come from who God is and not what he can do for us. Nebuchadnezzar doesn't respond well as I summarize the last bit of this. He has the furnace heated up more than usual, and he binds the men tightly. There is no escape for them. There is no hope outside of God's intervention. If they are to survive, it will be so by God's power alone. And there is no other way to explain it. The furnace is so hot that the men throwing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in actually die because of the heat. Now we are left wondering, will they die faithful men or be saved to be faithful men? Rarely is it easy to worship God. These men did the right thing and yet have suffered for it. The football player wasn't happy that I didn't help him cheat. And maybe your boss or your family will not be happy if you don't join in the bye-bye. Faithfulness isn't a promise to an easy road. It is often a path to difficulty. Resolving to be faithful won't necessarily bring you blessings from the worldly authorities, but it is worth it, and you are not alone. So as we get to our third resolution here, we resolve to walk with God. And this is the end of the chapter, and it says this, and I love this. Verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in alarm, and he said to his advisors, didn't we throw 3 men bound into the fire? And they respond, yes, of course, your majesty. And he exclaimed, look, I see 4 men not tied, walking around in the fire, unharmed, and the 4th one looks like the son of the gods. The king is astonished as he looks into the fire to see not 3 but 4 men walking around. God had rescued his people. Many people will ask here, who was that 4th person in the fire? And after much research, I can confidently conclude to you that I don't know. There's actually a lot of debate on whether this is a human form of God the Father or a pre-incarnation of Jesus. It's called a Christophany. or a theophany, as was the one I mentioned before, or maybe it to be an angel. We're not really sure. It's not clear exactly in the text, not definitive in the text. However, we can be confident about one thing, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not alone. God's presence was visibly with them. There's no debate on that. And Nebuchadnezzar and all the government officials from around the world, from every nation and every language, saw that the God of Israel had all the power over the king and any king. In a reversal of the beginning of the story, anyone who now speaks against the God of Israel will be arrested. And the Chaldeans who opposed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they must now be quiet and leave them alone. We see that God's sovereignty again soars above all worldly powers. God was with his people. And we celebrate this story, not because these men were saved from the fire, but because God was with them in the fire. We don't stand firm in our faith alone. God is with us. We so often ask, where was God when? And my answer is always, he was with his people to heal them or to rescue them or to receive them into his kingdom. God's promise throughout the Bible is to be with his people. And we see that displayed in our text today. As you stand firm, uncompromising, do so not in your own strength, but in God's presence as he is with you. Walk with God as he walks with you. Beloved, you are not alone as you worship God in the fire. Even in our Babylon, far from home, God is with us. When you face the pressures to compromise your faith, God is with you. He is in the fire beside you. And knowing this changes the way we see our trials. The fire becomes a refiner's fire. Just as gold passes through such fire to be purified, our trials then burn away the sinful parts of us, and it brings us closer to a God who is near to us. And the ultimate expression of this truth is in Jesus' coming to the world. Jesus walked among his people. He spoke audibly to them, and he showed them what faithfulness looked like. His promise to his disciples in Matthew 28 was that he would be with them always. That is his promise for us today as well. Beloved, Jesus walks beside us, carrying us through trials. Don't fight his loving hand. Resolve to walk with God today. Let's conclude. Today we witnessed an amazing story of God's power and his people's faithfulness. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not compromise their faith and worship. Let us join them in resolving to worship God alone. It's not easy, and we will not do it perfectly. But God is gracious, and he graciously pursues us and strengthens us for the task of walking with him. Be aware of the spiritual realities all around you. Let us learn to see behind the surface. Let us resolve to be faithful in the little things of everyday life. Let us take steps to grow in our faithfulness by spending time with God and his word and in prayer and with his people. Finally, as we face the trials of life, let us resolve to rely on God's power and presence to guide us through all of our fiery trials. He is with us, beside us, carrying us. Be faithful in his power. Let us worship the true King, and let all the powers and idols fall away as shadows to the light. Let's pray. We give thanks to you, O Lord, for you are good. Your faithful love endures forever. Because you are with us, we will not be afraid. You are our helper in troubled times. Forgive us for the idols we set up. Forgive us for when our worship goes to another. Be our strength to walk with you. We give you thanks, for you are the one in the fire with us. Amen.